Superhero Talk Show. I'm your host, Brad West. Joining me, of course, Mr. Greg Burrow from Dragon's Lair Comic Fantasy here in Austin, and Miss Anastasia Anderson. We are going to be talking for Halloween. Our Halloween theme is Spawn.
Yeah, Spawn.
Spawn. And why Spawn for Halloween, you ask? Well, to me, he's one of the best, if not the best, horror-themed comic book character superhero. Not necessarily horror comic book, but horror superhero. Yes, I know there are many, many other ones. One of my favorite eras, Ghost Rider, Blade. Okay, so one of my favorite eras of comic books in Marvel was, of course, the Midnight Suns, which they're roughly adapting into a video game now. We can talk about that when we get to our superhero video game episode. But I was there, personally, for the dawn of Image Comics and Spawn. And, of course, I've always been a Todd Mcfarland fan since the beginning when he was doing Spider-Man, because, of course, you know, I'm all about my Spider-Man. Spider-Man, adjectiveless Spider-Man #1 with the one of the most famous covers, one of the most copied covers in history.
There were a lot of covers.
A lot of homage covers. What was it you were saying about somebody from Austin?
Actually, back in the day, I used to be a comic book colorist. I was apprentice.
I remember.
Yeah, I was
Grimjack?
I helped Martin Thomas do Grimjack.
Yeah.
And a couple of other first titles, but one of the first Marvel jobs that he had was coloring that.
He was colorist.
He was colored that for the poster, the big poster.
Yeah.
And,
cool.
But yeah, so that was his connection to Todd Mcfarland into that. But
Todd Mcfarland. And an interesting thing about Todd Mcfarland, he to me he fits the mold of Stan Lee in that he was very much a personality to go along with the talent. So he took place outside of the camera and in front of the camera, and Marvel saw that as an opportunity to sell. It got his name out there, and of course with some other creators, they ended up breaking off and forming Image Comics.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about Spawn, and you can't really. It's almost like how Spider-Man is synonymous with Marvel. You know, you can't talk about Spawn or Image Comics without thinking about Spawn because he's.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like, just name other ones. He's become
their flagship character. Even though there are multiple creators involved with the creation of Image Comics, I mean, pretty much the only ones around these days that were really from the beginning.
You had to be a fan of Image Comics,
are Todd McFarlane's Spawn and Eric Larson's Savage Dragon. Yeah, and we talked about Savage Dragon last week, and both of them have been running mostly and uninterrupted since the beginning. So, I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, Spawn celebrated a 300th anniversary in 2017, somewhere around there, which was a big deal for a even Marvel and DC comic books don't even get up to 300 issues anymore without being relaunched at some point or another. So, so we're going to talk today about the beginning of Spawn and how it started off in the comic book.
Very cool. There's one thing that I'd like to say really quick, because it was Halloween week.
Mm-hmm.
Happy Halloween, everybody!
Happy Spooky!
But also, it is early voting, so please do
go vote, guys.
And it's November 2nd is obviously a very big voting day.
That's the big day.
Right around the corner. So yeah, do vote and let your thoughts and feelings be known.
Yes.
Yeah, for the love of God, go vote.
Speaking of political stuff, we're going to get into that about the Spawn stuff too, because it had a lot more political and social commentary. I went back and reread them recently, as well as some of the newer stuff, and we even rewatched the movies and the cartoons. So we can give you some
we got very in depth for you.
And you know what? There's a lot actually to talk about with Spawn.
Let's start off with Todd McFarlane in high school,
Todd
1977.
McFarlane in high school. Who of us who was a comic book superhero fan didn't create our own characters when we were in math class doodling? And Todd McFarlane, he created Spawn in 1977 in high school.
Yeah,
I actually had a superhero group that I created in high school called the Skull Squad.
Aww.
And one of the leader was a guy named Weir Rat. He would transform into a.
Nice.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And then the skull was like a floating disembodied skull.
Nice.
And he was kind of like the Professor Xavier of the group. And,
Weirdly enough, my one was a Catholic superhero. His name was Sabbath, and he fought genetically engineered angels and vampires. So
that's so cool.
I actually had a friend in college when I was going to art school, and she did some mock covers from some of my stories that I still have. They're some of my favorite pieces of art, and she like drew some covers from like my ideas for these stories. I wish I had somebody to draw the whole story out. I'm a graphic designer. I'm more of a fashion crafting. I'm a practical artist. Illustration is not my jam.
No, we do not art good. We are meant to put colors together.
I have a different kind of skill set, but
right.
But yeah, so Todd Mcfarlane starts drawing Spawn in 1977. You can look up the pictures for it. I wish we had the ability to show them to you a little bit better, maybe in the future.
It is fascinating.
Yes, once you start contributing to our Patreon, we will try and build up to that for you.
Write them down.
Write them down.
Because these are cool.
You can actually find pictures of it. It's very similar to how Spawn ended up in the end, except there's blue elements to the costume, and the mask is more Spider-Man-y. He did the evolution of it and how it came out, and how he was able to keep a little bit of that Spider-Man element, but make it more unique and stand out. I really appreciated that. But you can see in the original drawings, it definitely looked more Spider-Man-y.
And so he went and was actually hired at DC Comics, and he wrote. He did art for, right?
Right, he did the art for. He didn't write yet.
Infinity Incorporated #16.
He was doing all the Infinity Incorporated stuff.
Yeah. But this is where Mr. Bones shows up.
Yes. So if you've ever read Infinity Incorporated, it was really a cool comic book back in the day. It was when Justice Society and Justice League were still separate, and it was they were the proteges of the Justice Society. So it was kind of the equivalent of the Teen Titans, but for the Justice Society. And it was some of their kids or heirs or whatever and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And if you watch the current CW show Stargirl, you can see a lot of the influences from the Infinity Incorporated comic book. And one of the characters that was unique that Todd Mcfarlane designed, which was a new character who was not based on another hero, legacy character, was Mr. Bones. And if you go check out Mr. Bones, he's definitely got, you can see that Todd McFarlane art style, but also you can see the elements of Spawn already building up in there. The way the cape is done, the boots and gloves, and the black suit, and the red, and everything. I found Mr. Bones to be an interesting character because he's got a skeleton head, kind of Skeletor, right? But he's not a skeleton. It's just all of his soft tissue. He's a mutant or something. And all of his soft tissue is invisible. So his skin and his blood and his organs, everything but his bones and cartilage are invisible. So he looks like a walking skeleton.
Yeah, it looks rad.
And it looks really cool. Eventually, he takes over for the DEO in the comic books and becomes Director Bones. And so they just have him in a suit with a cigar.
It's just a skull and a suit.
It's just a skull and a suit with a cigar and everything. And
it was so good.
And it was really funny because when we were plotting this episode out, and I mentioned Mr. Bones, and I was having them look him up and everything. And like that night, literally, we're watching the newest episode of Stargirl, and they get on the phone and they're calling Director Bones. Me and Bo look at each other like,
So they did it, guys.
Do they show up in Stargirl? I don't know, but they called him, and spy stuff.
Well, talking about the cape, I think that the first real Spawn cape from Todd McFarlane is probably Batman number 423 in 1988.
Now this is I've actually
you want to see Cape game?
I've got a copy of this.
Yeah.
My uncle gave it. My husband's uncle gave us all his old comics when we got married, and it's like treasures in there. Let me tell you, I've actually got a copy of that. I should put that on the wall. It's definitely not sellable for what we're finding it online, mind you. We were looking it up.
Oh my god, it's like it. Yeah, it was $80 on the low side, up to $3,000.
Yeah, and this is a very important cover because it's definitely laying the seeds for McFarlane's style.
Yeah.
The
cape is everywhere.
The cape is everywhere, and you can definitely see. In fact, it was so iconic. It's also been copied many times, and it was so iconic that
Todd Mcfarland himself.
Todd Mcfarland actually copied his own art in Spawn number 230. He does an homage to his own Batman cover, followed up by Spawn number 231, where he does an homage to his own Spider-Man cover. So if you want
Yes, it looks great.
and
though.
they both are, and the comics. This is one of the things I was telling my husband when I went back to reread them. It's like, yes, Todd McFarlane has this big personality. He's a little bit, a big head for a while, especially back in the day. But he kind of earned it because composition. That man is a master of composition. Like if you look at his layouts,
they always look so good.
They're tight. There's no excessive stuff there. It's like really clean. I mean, even nowadays, comic books don't have that artistic that shape.
It's dynamic too.
It is.
Everything looks like it moves so well.
You have to also really understand that editorial these days, and for quite some time, has been very. They're constantly over their shoulders saying, no, you need to do it this way, this way. Whereas Todd McFarlane, especially when he was doing his own book, they were like, you do whatever you want, because he was making so much money for Marvel at that point because everybody was wanting McFarlane Spider-Man.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was like hands over fist money. So they were like, you do whatever you want, and they did.
That
really
Spider-Man number 1, that adjectiveless, I call it adjectiveless.
I mean, how many covers did they have of those, and they all sold out?
That one,
because they also had the silver cover.
Yes, they had it silver, gold, and
foil covers.
Technically platinum one.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. There was something special about the platinum one, but the silver and the gold ones, those were limited. Like just recently, the gold one sold for $40,000.
Yeah.
Jesus H. Christ.
Yeah, the gold cover. And another, it was really kind of interesting you're talking about that, because Jim Lee, who was one of the other founding members of Image, he created for Marvel, he created the adjectiveless X-Men book. And this is what led into Marvel giving Todd McFarlane his own book, because Jim Lee created this new X-Men book just called plain X-Men. Previously it was Uncanny X-Men, so just plain X-Men. And that one had 4 covers. Actually, it had 5 covers. It had 4 individual covers, or you could get one that had all 4 of them together, gatefold out.
Yeah.
And that...
I'm such a sucker. I would eat that up.
Oh, I've got all of them. Every single one of them. In fact, recently, our friend Angela, she's like, I found this one and I didn't know if you wanted it. I'm like, that's the gatefold one I didn't have. So now we have the whole thing, the whole set.
Oh my god.
But recently, Jim Lee sold the original layout, the original hand-drawing layout for that cover.
Oh my god.
And he sold it to, I don't know why. I have no idea why. But he had the original drawing for the X-Men #1 cover. And somebody in an article asked Todd McFarlane if he had any pieces of art like that. And he said the only one he had is there's a 2-page spread from Spider-Man #1, and I know exactly which page it is. It's really an amazing layout. You got to remember, this is another new thing when we're talking about advances in comic book production. Marvel was first taking advantage of their new full bleed system. So you no longer had gutters on the edge of the pages. These were like full bleeds, okay?
Right.
So the new Spider-Man book was really amazing because it was full bleed, which meant, of course, if you know your graphics lingo, full bleed means that they have to make the picture a little bit bigger. And of course, it's bigger to start with.
Yep, because it's got to stretch.
It has to reduce, right? So this is bigger, but then it's a 2-page, and then it's the full bleed. So it's this enormous drawing.
This big sweeping picture.
And he's like, I've still got that original 2-page spread with the full bleed and everything. And they're like, would you ever part with it? And he's like, maybe one day, if I were like donating to a charity or something, I would sell it. But other than that, no, there's no way that's leaving my hands.
Right.
And like,
and it's interesting to look at because he has such a flair for extravagance that makes like this stuff look cool. Because it's like you've got Batman with the big sweeping cape and the towering figure, and you've got Spider-Man where you can see the web spread
and you have to
out.
remember back in the 80s and 70s and 60s and stuff like that, artists didn't own their own work. They would turn it into Marvel. Marvel would keep it.
Yeah, they're like,
so
sweet,
they would
thanks,
have to
man.
buy their own art back from Marvel.
Oh yeah.
In a lot of cases.
I worked at Warner Brothers Studio Store, and we would actually sell original drawings and covers and pages and layouts, because Marvel and DC both would go through and they would like send them to the galleries, and I would sell original pieces. I would just sit and look at some of them. I've seen some like I've been like face to face with some like John Romita stuff, and
Now,
just
that being said, there are some really pivotal issues that I think Marvel may have donated or sold the entire Amazing Fantasy 15 art to a college, I think.
well, that's kind of cool.
Or to I think it's actually in a museum somewhere.
Yeah. Well,
But,
a lot, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of McFarlane stuff belongs in a museum. Now,
It does.
Now, one of the cool things about McFarlane that you may or may not know, and this is a matter of personal taste, but he actually re-established the style for Spider-Man in the 90s. And some of my favorite Spider-Man aspects, he made the eyes much bigger.
Yes.
Right.
And I kind of like that. And it's funny, they actually even talk about it in continuity about, like, Mary J makes fun of the suit with the bigger eyes, and Peter's like, well, the larger lenses are easier to see out of.
Yes.
Right.
You know,
Like,
or-
there's a reason.
You know, but he made the eyes bigger, but he also made the webs tighter. There were more webs on the design. There was more frequency of it. One of my favorite things that he did, and I've talked
And let's
about
not even get into the way he drew webbing.
the
and
actual webbing. He
It looks
redesigned
so
the way.
good.
My tattoo is literally a spider web straight out of Todd Mcfarlane comic book. I literally had them, like, I photocopied it and had it made into a transfer, and then when they did the tattoo, it's a Todd Mcfarlane web around my arm. And it just he changed so much about it that it just reinvigorated the look of the character and the style of it and everything moving forward.
And I really want to say it's like one of the first times that they actually like did something like that for Spider-Man, where the fan base just actually ate it up.
Oh, yeah.
Because normally when, like, you know, even like the black costume, there was like a lot of throwbacks saying, no, we want our red and blue,
Yeah.
and, you know, and stuff like that. So whenever they did anything small like that or big, that, you know, there was usually a fan outcry because they wanted their Spider-Man the way that they've always wanted their
Yeah.
Spider-Man. So
Right,
people
and for
actually
once
really
they were
liked
like,
the
oh.
look of the bigger eyes and the webs and stuff.
One thing, and now I'm going to tell you this, and all you fans are going to not be able to not see it anymore. You're going to see it, and you're going to blame me, and I'm going to put this wig in your ear. Is one thing that Todd Mcfarlane did with Spider-Man's mask that nobody does is, and he did the lines for the web. The one in the center goes straight down in the middle, so it comes from the nose straight down to the chin, and then it makes the web. And everybody else, when they get to the nose, they split this way, making the web go this way, and it makes a frowny face. And every time I look at Spider-Man, I see
It
a
makes
damn
a smile.
frowny face.
Oh my god.
And everybody else who draws it, the webs go off to the side with one web going across the
With
mouth
big one frown.
and this big one frown. And McFarlane, he took this weird mouth thing that they put on Spider-Man and made him look more expressionless, which made him look more bug-like, which made him look
creepy.
more creepy. And it's an element
God.
that really changed, and it's a small thing, and you don't know why when you're looking at it. Now that I've told you, go back and look, and you're going, oh, that's why the face it's not just the bigger eyes, it's the way he drew the webs. So unique to that Spider-Man. But moving on from Spider-Man to...
Well, you got to do Web of Spider-Man number 97, which was in 1993. So far we've done Infinity Incorporated, 1985, and then we went to Batman 423, which was 1988, and then we went to Spider-Man number 1, which was 1990, and now we're at Web of Spider-Man number 97 in 1993, the first Night Watch.
Now, Night Watch is a really interesting character, and this is where we go over some of the conspiracy theories. There's not quite proof one way or the other, and there's some they said kind of thing going on here. There was a character in Spider-Man who appeared after McFarlane stopped working for Marvel, called Night Watch, and I showed it to Anna, and she's like, "What? That's not Spawn?" I'm like, "Nope, that's not Spawn, but it very much looks like Spawn, and it has a kind of a similar origin to Spawn, only rather than his suit being alive, an organic element, it's a nanotech bot thing that reshapes itself, but it does the same thing. It has the same basic power. The cape changes shape.
now that I'm staring at the picture, I'm like, yeah, that looks like Spawn.
Yeah,
They just
but-
kind of shifted stuff around.
Yeah, just kind of shifted stuff around. And there has been some debate because Marvel can't prove one way and McFarlane can't prove the other way.
Right? They're not gonna say anything.
As to whether or not they had wind of Spawn, or if maybe McFarlane pitched Spawn and they didn't pick up on it, or whatever, or that
Well, that was 1993. Now, in 1992, Spawn #1 came out with the formation of Image.
right.
Yes.
So technically, Night Watch was in production and copyrighted before. So it was copyrighted before it, but it didn't actually hit stands until after. So it was kind of one of those weird publication things where it was technically before, but it ended up being after, and Spawn came out right in the middle. So they came up at the same time. And Night Watch was actually, in the long run, he kind of was, I don't know, it was so weird because it had the time travel element, like we were talking about with Ben Riley the other day. He was his own grandpa kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's what they call the bootstrap paradox, where he gets his powers from this random guy just shows up in this alleyway and gives him this suit that has all these powers.
Oh my god.
Only for the end of it, you find he goes back in time and dies and gives the suit to himself. So it's like,
Oh my god.
where does it actually come from? What it's a weird story,
Right.
and Spawn's definitely better. And of
It's
course,
Now, I'm just going to say this really quick. For tomorrow's episode, it's very important for you to remember the year 1992 when Spawn was first came out.
Yes.
Yeah.
because that's everything that happened there. It's
Yeah.
the formation of Image Comics.
Yes.
Now, we've talked about the business of comics here a couple of times, and work for hire, how most of the copyright stuff belongs to the company that produces it and everything like that, especially new characters and stuff like this. And at the time, especially in the 90s, especially at the speculation boom, when things were getting bigger and blowing up and everything, right before you get to the death of Superman and all of this stuff, and you have a lot of these creators going, why am I working for peanuts and getting screwed? We're doing all the hard work.
And then not even getting my art back.
Not even
Yeah,
getting
not
art
getting
back.
any kind of ownership.
Yeah, no ownership. They're creating new characters and stuff. Marvel's about to file bankruptcy. They're losing,
Oh, yeah.
everything. And so you get a bunch of people got together and like different artists and creators and like, you know what? Let's do our own thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's where you get Image Comics. And you get some of who are some of the biggest names at the time, whether they deserved it or not. Because we all know Jim Lee, of course, amazing. His
I mean,
X-Men
I
art.
personally picked up X-Men just because of his art. His
Oh,
art was absolutely
a
amazing.
lot of people did that.
Um,
Were art driven. I was in between. It depended. Like McFarlane was the first time I was ever strictly art driven.
yeah.
I was always story driven. I always was more into the writers and stuff.
I'm mostly a story-driven
But
guy.
yeah,
myself, but yeah.
But
It's
just
just
like McFarlane reinvigorated the look of Spider-Man, of course Jim Lee reinvigorated the look of X-Men. I mean, the X-Men animated cartoon was based on Jim Lee's designs and Jim Lee's
Yeah.
book. So Jim
The
Lee
jackets, them all wearing jackets and stuff. That was Jim Lee. All the pouches
was
everywhere.
big.
That
And
was
the pouches,
Jim Lee.
all those characters
Yeah.
were Jim Lee designs and aesthetics. So Jim Lee definitely, he's like, okay, he moved over and went to Image. And
Eric Larson.
Eric Larson did Savage Dragon. He had previously worked on the Hulk and some other Marvel comics. And he's a really who was it that did? Oh, there was a.
I want to say Eric Larson did Spider-Man after.
Eric Larson did do Spider-Man after McFarlane.
Todd-
He did.
yeah,
He did do Eric
yeah.
Larson. There was another Hulk artist who I really liked, and he went over to Image and did Pit. No, the Max. He did the Max was his character. Oh my gosh, I can't
Max?
remember. The Max was another Image comic character that made it into the he had an MTV animated show. And he was really kind of interesting character. But Image Comics, they got together and basically they supported each other.
Go ahead and say the one we're not talking about.
And then
Sam Keith.
Sam Keith, thank you. And Rob Liefeld was part of that. Rob Liefeld, who got way too much credit for his input on X-Men and actually not X Factor.
X-Force.
X-Force, yes. He worked on New Mutants and helped New Mutants become X-Force, and of course, created Deadpool and everything, but he didn't get any creative control over Deadpool that belonged to Marvel. So he's like, well, I'm going to go make my own characters. They all wanted to make their own characters in their own comic book. And they supported each other. Even some of their characters appeared in each other's books.
Yes.
And when we talk tomorrow, we'll talk about some of how that worked, positive and negative.
As the week goes on.
As the week goes on.
Because I think tomorrow we're going to talk about the animated
Oh, yes,
series.
yes.
We're going to talk about the
The
series.
HBO animated series. And
So-
we're also going to talk about video games.
So the takeaway from it is that Spawn was instantly popular.
Yes.
It was massively popular. I mean,
just for McFarlane alone.
Just for McFarlane
people
alone.
were. I mean, he was riding high on his Spider-Man fame, and everybody just wanted as much Todd McFarlane as they could get their hands on.
But very much like Jim Lee's Wildcats, the art was there to back it up.
Yes.
The art was but arguably, of all of the ones that came out, it was probably the best story-wise. It was the most engaging. I think it was the better of the pacing on it.
Well, I think that I don't want to say anything mean, but I guess I'm going to say something mean. I think
Oh my
it says a
God.
lot that Spawn is still ongoing, whereas where's Wildcats?
Wildcats is still ongoing
Is
because DC bought them.
Well, yeah, DC.
And
Everything
they-
moved over to DC, but I mean,
now,
They recently reappeared
but
again.
has it been continually going since?
Oh no,
that
no,
time?
no! It
Yeah.
hasn't been continually going. No,
Yeah.
DC kind of picked and chose them. So ironically, the whole we want to work for ourselves and not the man, blah 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 blah. It didn't actually take very long for Jim Lee to just
So
sell
the
out.
thing is that he didn't sell out. What happened is he's got full creative control of his
Yes.
characters and stuff.
Well, yes. So they Marvel and DC decided, or DC decided, well, we'll have a creator-owned imprint. And it actually has a lot to do with Milestone, actually.
Yeah, they did the same thing.
Is that Milestone was their first creator-owned imprint. We're like, okay, we're going to give creator-owned to Dennis Cohen and Dwayne McDuffie and all of them, for the Milestone characters. And they built off of that and offered a similar package to Jim Lee. And Jim Lee went back. Well, over the years, Jim Lee eventually managed to work his way up to as one of the head creative executives of DC, and he incorporated them straight back in there. The New 52, one of the things in the New 52 initiative was they actually incorporated the Wildstorm universe directly into it. But just like the Milestone universe, they kind of cherry picked pieces of it.
Yeah.
Because Static was so popular and important, he made it into main DC. Well, same thing with Grifter. I like Grifter. Grifter made it into DC from the Wildstorm comic books characters, but now they're starting to shift them back to their own universe again. So it's like I don't know how that's going to work because I'm not keeping up with that aspect. That's a current post-rebirth thing. But you're right. They did say a lot about Spawn, both Spawn and Savage Dragon, as we talked about, that they have been continuously produced. Now McFarlane has on occasion had guest writers, guest artists, but he's always maintained creative control. Unlike Savage Dragon, where Eric Larson has done the whole thing the entire time, which is amazing. But McFarlane has had a lot of he's had a lot of other irons in the fire.
That's an understatement. And we'll be talking about that next.
And so we're going to talk
Yes.
about this next episode. So
we're also going to talk about McFarlane toys.
We're going to
Yes.
talk about McFarlane and Image Comics blowing up on the scene and becoming the new it thing and the first major contender to Marvel and DC in decades. So
yeah.
thank you for joining us today. Catch us tomorrow and we will give you a little bit more of the history of Todd McFarlane and the journey of Spawn. Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
Bye-bye.
Really quick before we cut off. What's your favorite Image title?
My favorite Image title?
Yeah.
I mean, definitely Spawn. It always was. I didn't really
You know
read.
enough to.
I'm going to just say Spawn because I'm
Spawn.
like, that's the one I know.
Now
Well, I personally
the
love
second-
Sunstone and I love Saga.
I also really enjoyed Invincible when it first came out.
Yeah.
I unfortunately.
Oh, that technically isn't.
I
It is an
didn't
Image
really-
Comics thing.
Yeah, it's a Kirkman, the guy who. Well, Walking Dead is Image too.
But I'm a big
Oh, yeah.
Stefan Sajic fan, so
Yeah.
I love Sunstone. Talking about story, that has an amazing
Yes.
story in it, but the art is just absolutely
Yeah,
gorgeous.
Yes.
we talked about Image.
And Saga is basically Romeo and Juliet in space, which
Yeah.
is just if written for Heavy Metal magazine.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's awesome.
We'll talk about more about the modern Image comics here, and because Miller World has a whole. I just found a whole bunch of those things.
Stuff, yeah.
So,
All right.
You guys take care. See you soon.
Bye.